Welcome, everybody, to the first really technical showing of my new podcast, which is going to be entitled You versus You. And the reason why I labeled it that way is because it's really just more of like a mental, spiritual, that can also become a physical perspective on really how to compete against yourself instead of like our societal beliefs or just material things and what's really all around us. And I just wanted to just give a brief just disclosure about the mission statement of this podcast, just to kind of explain like the background and what my purpose and intention for it really is. Before I tell you my story, which is what we're going to get into in a little bit, I just wanted to kind of explain the reason why I'm interpreting and why I'm um, signing at the same time. I am an interpreter by profession, but in this podcast, my role is not going to be as an interpreter. The reason why I am signing is because uh, my path to the you versus you mentality really started by utilizing the 12 steps and just using it with everyday life. And so the 12th step is actually being of service. And so by learning all these tools that I have through yoga, becoming a yoga teacher, and going through my experiences of going to rehab and trying to become better, all of those things were given to me, but the 12th step says that you have to be of service and give it all back. And by signing this podcast, that's making it as accessible as possible. That's my part in this role. And I know that there's accessibility to caption on this, but when I'm going to be storytelling, I think it's important to sign because it actually expresses the tone of the message and you're really getting a feeling for someone's emotions. I'm not always going to be interpreting, or I'm sorry, not interpreter role. I'm not always going to be signing because some of these podcasts are not going to be storytelling. So it's really hard for me to sign and voice at the same time. So you can always turn on your closed caption for that. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and try my best. So I get it. You can give me as much feedback as possible, and I'll take it. I get it, especially from the deaf community. I would appreciate it because at the end of the day, I really want you to really grasp what's being told here. And I guess for that, I'm going to hand it over to a friend of mine who's also really helped me in the production part of this process. And this is Andrew, and he's going to help introduce me and just kind of be a little bit of emotional support system through this process because I am a little nervous because I really wanted this to be a success, and with the intention of if I can just help at least one person, then we did our job today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Excited to be on the podcast. Thank you so much, Darla, for introducing me and allowing me to interview you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm so excited for you to join us today. Thank you.
Awesome. So, how about we start here? Let's just start at the beginning of your story, and we can take it from there because you know your story better than I do. So, I think it makes sense for you to start us off.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's funny because I've told my story in different aspects, whether it's in the rooms of recovery or if it's doing some different type of testimonial with my friends or in different avenues, but it never gets old, and it's never word for word, so it can change a little bit, and sometimes I might get off point. But the most important thing I think that you said in the beginning of this is that it's from the heart, and that's what the most important thing is.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, and I just really want to also mention that I'm going to really try my best that um, this is my story, limiting people who are involved in the growth of it. It's important for me to not share their story because it's theirs, but just my experiences through all of that and where I've come to today. And with that, I can just explain that my childhood was pretty different, although I didn't realize it. I grew up with a lot of deaf people in our family. My father was one of five children, all of them deaf. My grandparents on that side were deaf as well. And then on my mom's side, she has two brothers, one of them being deaf too. So they're both deaf out of three. The other brother can hear. All of the cousins were hearing, my brothers, I'm middle of two boys, the three of us can hear. But yeah, sign language was our first language. And, just being in the world around us, we developed our ability to speak. Um, and my older brother and I are from my real father, and my real father and my mother divorced when I was a baby, and it was pretty rough. I don't remember my parents being married at all. I was very young when they divorced, but my father had us for a while because my mom, it was just a big struggle. She wanted to get us, but unfortunately that didn't happen until years later. But while my brother and I lived with my father, it was a struggle. My father did struggle with addiction, and unfortunately, he never um, came to terms with it, and it impacted us growing up. We were very traumatized. To this day, we have a lot of traumas. There's things that can trigger me and make me anxious. Um, and for a lot of people, you hear this a lot in the rooms. When I was growing up, I always said I would never be like that, that I would never do that to my children. Got my tissues ready.
Mhm.
Um, but that's when you know it's a disease. And I actually argued that it was a disease, alcoholism. Even when I knew I had alcoholism, I thought that was just an excuse. And a lot of people will argue that it is, and that's your right. That's fine. But for me, I knew it truly was a disease when I became an alcoholic. After all those years, I said I would never do that to my kids and raise a family. And my goal in life, oh, well, let me go back. So eventually, when I was about, I don't know, I think it was like close to fourth grade, my mom finally was able to get custody of me and my brother after my father was in and out of jail very often. We've seen a lot, things that children should never see. And my mother and my stepfather were able to take us, and we moved to Maryland from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And it was hard for my mom at first and my stepdad. It was quite an adjustment. They had a 2-year-old son, which is my half brother, who I love. We always say he's my half brother, but I whole love him. He's one of my best friends. He's great. We were very close. Um, but it was a hard transition for them and for me and my brother to adjust. And so just growing up, it just wasn't your typical childhood. And really, now that I realize now what I know, what childhood really is normal, right? Um,
Mhm.
but I we both just grew up in the house with my younger brother and just went through life. And I was a normal teenager. And to be honest, like I think sports, especially lacrosse really saved me when I was lacrosse here in Maryland for a girl. Seventh grade for it to become prevalent in Maryland is pretty late if compared to what it is now. So when it first came up and I um, just found lacrosse, that was like my escape.
Mhm.
It still is to this day. I still play, believe it or not.
That's
And I,
awesome.
I quote play because, like, for a 47-year-old, what does that really mean? Anyway, but I think for any athlete, or not even just an athlete, but when you find an outlet, when you find an escape, and I didn't know it back then, for me, when I stepped onto the field and I was good, and I think that's why I loved it so much because I found something that really gave me confidence that I didn't have. Um, Nobody could touch me. And I mean, like, we were all equal on the field, and
Mhm.
everybody else was out there. And this, like, my upbringing, it didn't matter. We were all the same, and we were there for one goal, literally the goal.
Mhm.
And I just can't believe that was like the one constant that would stay with me throughout my life. Like, I mean, I just love the sport to this day. And
Mhm.
so that really like saved me because a lot of times, my friends were having boyfriends and doing their own thing. And I was always the third wheel, but I never really had a boyfriend. I just was playing sports and just, we were going to parties and everything. And I drank normally. Maybe I got drunk. I don't even remember that it was really like had an impact on my upbringing. And even when I went to college, which if you're from Maryland or the surrounding area, everyone knows. Well, back then when I went, my college it's called Frostburg State University. That was the party school. Like it was
Mm.
everyone's safety school. And you were lucky to graduate because, first of all, it wasn't hard, but it was because we partied so hard.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, I partied just like everyone else, though. But again, I played lacrosse in college, and so
Mhm.
that saved me. We had curfew. That was the thing that trumped everything. If I knew that, my coach would do random like pop-ins to check in on us on a Friday night because we had a game like Saturday or Sunday, and it was
Mm.
possible, and they did it every once in a while. They would show up to our house. I didn't even want to chance it. I was in bed. That's what really kept me going was lacrosse. And I loved it, like I said. So college really wasn't an issue with my drinking. So fast forward, plus I had a boyfriend throughout college, and so like it was like my first boyfriend, my first love. Like that was like, my alcohol. And he was an athlete, so he was into football. He was playing football. He was our quarterback. So we were just like very into athletics, and
Mhm.
yeah, that really helped. Just kind of keep. I mean, we partied, but it could have been
Mhm.
way worse. So fast forward. Graduated college, I'm happy to say, and moved to the beach. We all lived at the beach every summer, and we partied like crazy at the beach. But still, it was same. I mean, I was 21. Everyone that was partying, like the way that it would lead to now, that's what we were doing at 21. The problem is I was still partying like that when I was 47. Well, not 47. Now I have a little over 2 years of sobriety, but I mean, it wasn't every night, but it was like, blackouts. Um, but I dated and, I was young, I was single, living in the city, had a few boyfriends throughout, but it always popped up. There was always a situation that I would get close to somebody and there would be a discussion with like, you're drinking too much, and it was like they they were nervous to say it and just like
Mm.
bring it up, and it just like I just kind of was like whatever. But in the back of the mind, in my mind, I'm like it's brewing. And in the
Mhm.
rooms, they're always saying things like it's just doing push-ups. It's just waiting for you to just like tap into it. And that's what it did for me. And I knew it. But I was lying to myself. I was lying
Mhm.
to everybody around me. There's so many situations that people have no idea to this day, even though I've like admitted so much. There's times where like I was drunk or drinking when I shouldn't have been. But I will say I never did it on the job. That was also something that like I was really good at, like, okay, focusing on that. But, it's still like, I was calling in sick a lot
Mm.
because I was hungover. And I was partying and like one thing would lead to another. You drink and you do other things that I regret, and it would just get worse and worse. And over time, like waking up the next day, just like this feeling of just like wanting to die because,
Mm.
first of all, you physically felt awful. But then you're also like, what did I say? Not remembering anything is the worst feeling in the world.
Mm.
And when it happens more often than not, it's just worse and worse and worse. And finally, so when I was 32 years old, I met my now ex-husband, and I don't like to say the word ex because we're getting along really good right now. So I, my past husband. I don't know. I feel like ex has such a negative like
Yeah.
connotation, but
Mhm.
it's my four children's father, and he's a wonderful
Mhm.
man, and we do the best that we can. But I met him when I was 32, and he really saved me. He really did. Um, but what I didn't realize now is that it was temporary. It was just postponing because with alcoholism or anything else that's not treated like any disease, it's not going to go away.
Mhm.
But I didn't know that. And I thought by doing all these other things, not by treating that, just doing other things, that I would be okay, like having babies. And going back to what I said when my father, when I would watch what my father did, just feeling scared, living in fear. And my brother really got the worst of it. Like anything I did wrong, my brother got punished for. And it always stuck with me. And he could really hate me, but it's like the complete opposite. My brother is like my second dad. He's really my first dad. Like he's other than lacrosse, he's been the main constant. He is. Here's lacrosse, here's my brother, has been the main constant in my life. There's sometimes that I have to check in, and I've been like calling his wife and be like, I'm sorry if um my brother's like answering my calls like right away. And I try to really limit. I've gotten a lot better in my sobriety to really be conscious of um letting them be a family and me growing on my own, because I realized that I depended on other people too much. And that's my fault. But he could have gone the opposite way. He could have really just like uh had a lot of like resentments towards me. Maybe he does, I don't know, but he's really just have been the most wonderful person in the world to me, and still continues to be, both of my brothers. Um but like I said, when I was little, like I just remember that feeling of just like waking up literally in fear a lot, and
Mhm.
not sure if I was going to have a sober dad when I woke up. I'm talking about in the morning, or
Mhm.
if he was going to be drunk and just screaming and screaming. That's all he did was scream. Um, and just that living in fear, it stays with you. And it, over time, when you become an adult, it surfaces, especially when you have children of your own. And again, it's like that untreated, um, like trauma. And
Mhm.
the reason that maybe I was drinking, I am my father's daughter. Yes, I might be predisposed because it's in my DNA, but the truth is it can happen to all of us, whether it's in your DNA or not, especially now, with the way our world is and COVID and everything, because that's really when it took off. But I promised myself when I had a family, and of course, when you envision your future, it's perfect, right? I'm going to have
Mhm.
two boys and two girls. And it's funny because I actually had it in that order. And I did predict that part. That I got right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so funny. I wanted four children. I wanted them to have like a life that was like stable, that I didn't have. And I don't want if my parents see this, I don't want them to feel like they didn't give that to me, because it needs to be said that everything that happened in my past, I'm so grateful for, because it led me to where I am today, to be able to
Mhm.
share that story and be able to hopefully help somebody else, because there's more of us out there than probably not. Um, so, uh, but anyway, I said, yeah, I'm gonna have like this family and everyone's gonna play lacrosse. It's gonna be perfect. And it's funny because my children's father, he was a wonderful lacrosse player. He played at Towson University, Division I player, and just everything, like just a wonderful person, background, very faithful person. His family is very faithful, and that's his foundation, and that's why I say that he saved me in the beginning. And I think it's important for everyone to know that if there's someone that's watching, that either their wife or their husband is the one that's struggling with this disease, it's not your fault. And I have to tell you, it's never your fault. Maybe there's things that trigger us, but it's not. For me, I can safely say it's not his fault. And I'm not sure if he gets it, even though it's been repeated. But I'm sure there's some moments where he says, okay, well, now my wife is sober, my ex-wife is sober. And it happened after we tried so many times while we were together. And then all of a sudden we're divorced, and here she is sober. But it has nothing to do with that. And I think that's important for all those spouses, husbands, wives, partners, whatever. You need to know it's not your fault. We needed
One thing I
this.
want to
Yeah.
one thing I want to add to what you just said is sometimes like it takes people to hit rock bottom for them to actually want to feel the need and the pain to create that change.
And I am so glad you said that, because that's exactly why he did it. He it wasn't like overnight. It wasn't a surprise when he said this has to happen. He didn't want it. He did not want the divorce. I mean,
Mm,
it was my disease that led to it at the end of the day.
mm,
And he gave me so many opportunities, but he knew, and people were telling him, it's enabling. You keep giving and giving and giving without consequence, then it's I could die. He needs to know that by him divorcing me, he that was a way of saving my life,
mm,
and that it's true. And I'm telling you, it's true. Um, and what could have happened is that I could have, felt a lot of pity on myself and gotten worse, and I could have died. But by the grace of God, um, I surrendered. And that's
mhm,
the point of this whole podcast because um, I stopped saying I can do this on my own. I stopped me being in control, Darla being in control, because
mhm,
I finally, it came to a time, it took me 5 times and lots of relapses. Um, and for anyone out there who's like, oh my gosh, 5 times, you know, the numbers don't matter. And I'm telling you that because there's people out there 19, whatever. The point is that you've got to find what works for you. And let me tell you that the more times you try, the more resilient you become.
mm,
And you're opening up your mind to what's out there because you don't want to give up. Me and my
mm,
brother have had that fight or flight mentality since day one. We've always had motivation. I just didn't know how to navigate it. And now it's funny because they say when you are in this disease and you're really like completely in the thick of it, like we're here and here's like the normal people. But
mhm,
when you find, and for me, it's 12 steps. I tried everything, but what finally hit me was when I surrendered and said, I will take all the suggestions, I will take everything. For me, that meant getting a sponsor first and foremost. And I avoided it for so long because I knew that that person was going to call me out on my BS. They were
mm,
going to know everything about me. And so that meant like, oh, well, maybe I'll be sober today, but they won't know if I drank later on. Oh no,
mm,
they know. An alcoholic to another alcoholic, they always know. They can hear it in your voice, even if you haven't had a drink, because you've already relapsed in your mind. Your voice, there's
mm.
something, I mean, it is like a maternal instinct or like eyes behind your head. There's something really special and intuitive. And so, and I knew that because I was already warned in rehab.
Mm,
So finally, I decided, okay, the second I leave rehab, my sponsor already told me she was going to be my sponsor. Don't be afraid. They're not going to let you go if you've relapsed over and over again. As a matter of fact, a sponsor is going to be there for you the most when everyone else has given up on you. That's what they're for because they've been through it. Okay. You don't have a sponsor that's sober,
mm.
that's been sober.
Right.
So when I first got out of rehab, I called her. We went straight to a meeting, and that's how I started it. I gave up everything and then went straight to sober living. And sober living, like everyone has this like there's labels, right, on everything that completely alter our perspective. Like the
Mm,
second I went into rehab, I'm labeled, well, she's an alcoholic, but I'll be the first to tell you I am. But it's scary because people know they need help, but they're afraid to actually do it because then you're labeled already. It's true. And
yeah.
so, and that's why it is anonymous. When you go into these
Mhm,
rooms, it's anonymous. For me, I learned that for me being transparent, me being vulnerable, that actually works for me. And so I've got to go all in and I've got to be willing to do that. And I actually just texted my sponsor today because I was so nervous to tell her that I'm doing this. And finally I was like, you have to know I'm doing a podcast. And she was like, yes, this is great. And I'm like, I felt like I was like cheating on somebody by not telling them. But that's why you have your sponsor because you need to check in with them. And they're not going to say yes or no, you can't do that. They're going to guide you. And I forgot about that. But when I left rehab, like I said, I took all the suggestions, and my now then husband did his part, and he still works on himself. So he's been very supportive. But I had to put like a sober, like one of those intoxalock things in my car. Look, I've never
Mm.
had a DUI. I've never had a DWI. Maybe I should have had one, but I nobody wants to wait until it gets to that point. Nobody wants to wait
Hmm.
until I kill somebody, and I have to say
Right.
that because I could have.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just like just saying it out loud is really scary, but it has to be said. It's so important. Um, so I did that, and this is like months, and I stayed at the most wonderful sober living. I'm still really good friends with them, and these women were crazy. It's like you just picture, and I keep saying it's like Orange is the New Black mixed with the Golden Girls.
It's
Like
funny.
it was just like that living situation, and we're raw, and we laughed a lot, and we cried a lot, and we were there for each other. And the most important thing is that we were honest with ourselves, and that
Hmm.
really helped us get through it.
Yeah.
So that's what led us up to that point. Um, and then um, once I'm missing a lot, and maybe like more will be revealed like throughout this tenure of this podcast.
Hmm.
But for now, just giving my testimony into where I am today. Um, there's a lot of funny stories about being drunk in the past, and it was fun. I'm not going to lie. We had a lot of good times until
Hmm.
it didn't. Until it
Right.
didn't. You know, um, I have like I have like the most amazing children that love me. And there was a point, and I'm not alone in saying this, where maybe there were several points where I wouldn't I wasn't ever thinking of killing myself. I wasn't. A, because I'm a coward. I'm too scared to kill myself. I wouldn't know what to do. But second, um, obviously, in the back of my mind, I was just clouded. But I I would be lying to you if I said that if something else. Oops, sorry, my emotional pet dog. She knows when I'm crying. She's
Yeah.
not really an emotional pet dog, just for now. But I thought about things where it was like, if something did happen to me, I would let it happen because
Mm.
I didn't feel, and I don't want people to be like, oh, poor Darla. Like, it's not like that. Um, I didn't feel like um, I had a place in this world at that time. And I felt like the kids were better off without me. It's crazy, right? It's
Mm.
crazy because, like, they were scared. That's a selfish thought, but that's what the
Hmm.
disease is. It's very selfish. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, knowing what I know now. And I thought it was the end of the world, got the divorce papers, and I'm just like, um, I lost everything, and I did. It was rock bottom. Work has always been a motivator. Like I can shift my focus, even if I don't care about the job. I like my job, but it was a scapegoat. So I just got into that and I worked, and then I always, for me, had to check in and make a conscious contact with God. So for me, the first step was just surrendering, and then
Hmm.
secondly is believing that there's something out there that's bigger than me, and for
Hmm.
me, that's God. And then step three. So those are the most important things for me. And I'm not gonna. I'll get down in the other podcasts for the steps. But the third step was the most important thing because that was my biggest struggle. Is saying I'm taking everything that I have, the struggles, the burdens, everything, and saying, "Here you go, God," and letting Him take it. Like Jesus, take the wheel. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what I do. And I say it every day. And I'll get towards the end, but every morning I get down on my knees and I pray. I pray all the time throughout the day, but like an actual focus on conscious contact with God, I say the third step prayer, and I'm going to try to remember because I'm overwhelmed. But I just say, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me from the bondage of self. Take away my difficulties so that victory over them might bear witness to those I might help of thy love, thy power, and thy strength. And may I do thy will always. And then I
Hmm.
go about my day. And there's times where I'm just like driving down the road and I'll just be like, thank you, God. Thank you.
Hmm.
And if I'm late, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for me having that first world struggle. If that's the worst that's happening to me right now, thank you. I'm
Hmm.
always thanking God. So where I am today is that, yeah, my kids are in and out. Technically, they're still under their father's roof, but we come and go as we please. We don't need a court order to say any different. We live so close. They actually are moving even closer. There's a bike trail. I mean, I'm blessed because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't have it like where we're putting our children first so that we can get along at the end of the day. Like I can't
Hmm.
believe I'm going to say it. And for me, I've always wanted to be friends with him. But I think I can't speak for him, but it feels like we have this like mutual respect. And he did say to me that he doesn't give me credit, but he really is proud of it, of the
Hmm.
how far I've come. And I don't need to hear that because I do feel like I owe a lot. And that's my own struggle. Um, but today, oh my gosh, Andrew, like to be able to start this and be able to share my testimony without shame, you know, and just like say that we're all the same in our souls and just wanting to share that story because I know when I'm finished this, I feel lighter. I feel like a weight has
Yeah.
been lifted. And so,
Hmm.
anyway, that's my story.
Awesome. I love that, Darla. Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that. Uh, that was obviously, there's a lot there and a lot to unpack. And I do want to dive deeper on a couple parts of it. Um, I know you answered a couple of my questions already. I was going to ask what the hardest step for you was, and I think you shared that it was really surrendering to God. But
No,
I,
it's the
oh,
fourth
wasn't that?
step. I just
Which
haven't
one was
talked
that?
about that. Surrendering
Okay.
to God. Yes, I always
Hmm.
believed in God, but I didn't really believe the giving up is the surrender. But the fourth step is really unpacking.
Mm.
It's analyzing and just oh my gosh, I need to know the word for word, but it's like taking inventory, self inventory, and
Mm.
facing it. And so that's hard for a lot of people. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But yes,
No,
first
no,
step
you're
is
good.
very hard.
Hmm. I know, like, I mean, obviously, this isn't about my story here, but I can relate to you on some levels of it for sure. Because
Please.
I didn't have the easiest childhood by any means either. Nothing to do with like alcohol, more so like physical abuse and things like that. But I know how it can feel, especially like being a kid. Yeah, let's just start from back there. The beginning
Yes.
is when you're a kid. I remember you saying like you you're going through all these hardships, but you didn't know any better, obviously, because that's all
Right.
you're used to. And I remember feeling the exact same thing whenever I was in the thick of it as a kid. Is like when I was going through the physical abuse and things like that, I didn't actually realize like that it was not normal. Actually, the way I found out was I was just randomly talking to my friend who was saying the night that night I was like 12 years old, and I just kind of shared with him something, and he was like, "Bro, like that's abuse, like that's not right." And that's kind of like when my whole my perspective shifted. And yeah, I think that there always has to be something. I feel like that kind of like because you don't know what you don't know. It's like that thing like you don't know what you don't
That's
know
my favorite
until it's
statement. I always say that. You don't know what you don't know. And there's this one guy in the rooms that always says, I don't know nothing about nothing. And I like it.
mm,
But you're right. Yeah.
mhm. But I guess like another question I was gonna ask you is like so. Well, one is, do you still have like a good relationship with your dad?
You know what? And I didn't even mention this, but he did pass away. And
Mm,
actually, I'm glad you brought that up. It was not a direct, it was an indirect result of this disease. He
mm.
actually died. He was in a fire in his
Oh wow.
apartment. Yeah, he died in a fire. And they didn't have like a lot for the ADA law. You're supposed to comply with like lights in your
Mm,
homes, and especially if it's like, you're in an apartment building that's like public building, and they didn't have lights in their apartment, and
mhm,
the whole building caught on fire, and we think it may have, I don't know where it started, to be honest,
mhm.
but there's a lot of speculation. Maybe he was drinking, but nobody else got hurt, but he was deaf and there were no lights to alarm
Oh
that
yeah.
there was a fire. And so he did, I think it was about, it was bad. It was 75% of his body was
Mm,
burned, and he was
wow.
actually laid up on like, it was like an air, like a thin air thing, because he was in a medically induced coma for months. And even in his coma, I remember going to visit him in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., because I live in Maryland.
Mhm,
And even in his coma, every once in a while, he would like twitch, because
mm,
even in his coma, he felt that pain. It was how severe it was. And he
wow.
eventually would pass away from pneumonia and sepsis.
Mm,
There were so many open wounds. I mean, they tried their best, but
yeah.
for me, I thought he was at peace, because it wasn't just a physical ailment, but I mean, he struggled so much. And it's funny that you bring it up, because up until about last year, no, yes, last year,
Mhm,
we went to go visit my great aunt, which is also his godmother, and she's hearing in New York, and she loved him. And she's the type of person, she's a Franciscan, so she sees the beauty in everyone. So
mm,
her faith is like first and foremost. And in the beginning of it, I was a little resentful, because I felt like she didn't know um, enough to like defend him. But now that I've gone through this process of the 12 steps, and she explained how my father grew up and she witnessed it firsthand, he struggled really bad.
mm,
And I almost I've changed my perspective. Like when he passed away, I mean, I've been angry for years. I don't talk about him. People post things like about his birthday and stuff, and I just like I've ignored it. And I just like, yeah, I talk about him like in my dad or whatever, but it's weird, because as open as I am about stuff, that's the one thing that I just like never really shared about it. But now, knowing what I know now and the steps that I've gone through, there now I'm sorry. Like I feel um I have regret about not having that conversation with him and
mhm.
forgiving. Now that I'm starting to forgive myself, I'm like forgiving, it's just wild. And maybe it should be in reverse order, I don't know, but that I wasn't like compassionate enough, because I didn't know. We don't know what we don't
Yeah.
know. And even today, okay, people are going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but I am just obsessed with crime TV.
Mm,
And I will watch something about like a serial killer,
mhm,
and people are just like, it's on a documentary, and people are like, I hope he rots in hell and blah blah. And but in the back of my mind, and this isn't how I used to be, and maybe you all think I'm crazy for saying it, but in the back of my mind is like, but how did he get there? How did he
mm.
get to, he he's clearly sick. I was sick.
Right.
My disease is different. But who am I to say, oh, well, this person, I'm not God. So my empathy for so many people, and look, these things haven't happened to me, so that can easily change. But my perspective for people, for people, like I just I don't know anything about them, so I can't judge. And so now,
Mhm.
I feel some regret that my father isn't here for me to say that, but I'm just grateful that I'm changing that perspective, and I don't know, just talking out loud about it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually going to ask, like, was it pretty hard for you to like fully feel like you've forgiven him?
Um I don't know that I'm there yet.
Mm,
It's funny, because as this recovering alcoholic, I have everything. I've got a therapist, I have a
mhm,
sponsor, I have 12 steps. I'm a yoga teacher, but as a yoga teacher, we still have to take classes. I have breath work. I mean, maybe I could be doing more, but I think I'm doing pretty good.
mhm.
Um, and you never know it, but over time you start noticing things about yourself that you never knew become you.
Hmm.
And this is the funniest thing that I love like sports movies. I really do. And I remember in Rocky 4 when he boxes the Russian, and at the end, everyone starts, I mean, they're in Russia and everyone starts changing who they're cheering for, and it's Rocky. And he gives this like speech. Okay, this isn't a true story, but it was just something that I just
Hmm.
thought, for me, I think I really could relate to it. But he kind of gets on the microphone and he's like, if I can change, then we can all change. And
Hmm.
and he says that because for me, I used to blame certain things about me on being like Italian. I'm a
Hmm.
spitfire. Like I'm so quick to, and I thought it was cute in the past. I liked being that way, but then I was like, no, no, no. We could all change and become better, and we don't have to be a specific way, but the goal is there. It's like enlightenment. I'm probably not going to make it there, but it's that journey. And that's what 12 steps has taught me. And so the forgiveness aspect, I think that's ongoing.
Hmm.
And I like that. I don't ever want to say, well, my job here is done. No, I'm always a student, you know,
Hmm.
I need to stay humble. So
Hmm.
I want to learn about forgiveness all the time.
So I actually want to share something with you that I think would be, um, I don't know, I think you can give you a little bit of a perspective that maybe you never even thought about when it came to forgiveness. But for me, like, I'm not going to say who the person that like was abusing me was, but when I'll just say obviously it was somebody in my family, and so whenever like I got older, so this was happening from like 8 years old until like probably 14, 15 years old, is like when most of like pretty much all the physical abuse was going on, going on. But yeah, it was like for the longest time I had so much resentment. Like I would never tell them that I loved them. I didn't tell them I loved them for I think it was 8 years, 8 or 9 years, and they're someone that's like in my immediate family. So like that's pretty like a pretty big deal. But finally, like luckily, I had some really good mentors in my life who they were pouring into me and they kept telling me like, "Yo, bro, like you got to get right with this person. Like you got to get right with them before you go like off to college and everything." And they were both Christians, and I knew both of them had my best interests at mind. And I was just like, why though? Like I don't know. I just didn't understand. And part of it also was like I didn't want to forgive this person because I knew like this was the part where I think will be really useful for you, Darla, is like part of me didn't want to forgive that person because I felt like if I was gonna forgive them, then one is I didn't have anything on them, and then two is that if I forgave them, then I thought it would be leaving me exposed and powerless. And by me holding on to it, it's allowing me to feel like I keep some of the power that had been taken away from me my entire life, basically, from that person. And so I think for you, it, I think this relates to your story well because, like, obviously, I don't know the exact relationship with everything you had with your father, but I think by being able to forgive him and continuing to work through that process, because it's definitely not an easy thing. I mean, it took me a while for me to be able to forgive this person as well. But once you do, like, instead of feeling vulnerable, like, well, you have to be vulnerable in that moment, but instead of feeling more vulnerable after, it's like you said, you feel that huge weight off your shoulders.
And I've been working on it, and I've come a long way, Andrew. That is so powerful, and I feel like by you saying that, look, you're the one that's interviewing me, and it's already, look, we're having a conversation about it. That's this whole thing. That's
Hmm.
this whole thing. Nobody has to like speak up, and first I really want to reiterate, and I forgot to mention this. This is not an AA meeting by any means. This is not sponsored by an AA meeting. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to make a conscious effort to not even use that word. I only use it in reference to where I go. But we could all learn from each other. And what we say is it takes two people to have a meeting and to really have an impact and have a conversation. And just by you and me having it, I didn't know that you were going to tell me that. I didn't know that was your backstory, you
Hmm.
know? And so that's the whole goal. And I don't want that for anyone. But if someone is going to tell me that story, well, let's make good use of it. And you just did. You gave me something that could help me grow. And so I just wanted to say thank you for everything and just really being there. And Andrew, I haven't even asked him this, and I think he'll be okay with it. But I think it's important that he's kind of a frequent flyer, showing up. You
Yeah,
know,
I'd love to.
he's like my one man band. He's the the production crew, and we can have these conversations, and it's just like such a beautiful surprise. And I'm really grateful that you were brought into my life, through electronics. And so here we are. And
No,
so
I'm
thank
grateful
you for
for it as
this.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
One more
Well,
thing. I want to say one more thing about your
sure.
story because so going back to the part where you're talking about like having these like I guess suicidal type thoughts and like
They
just
weren't suicidal. We have to be
or
careful with that word.
okay. So how would you classify them? Would you
I
say?
would say just letting, not protecting myself if somebody, if outliers were to
Hmm.
do it to me, just kind of giving up,
Okay.
not fighting for myself in so many aspects.
Okay. Gotcha. So like when you're having all these thoughts, like I'll just say like I'll classify all as just like negative thoughts in general. And so when you have all these negative thoughts, if you think about this from a a Christian perspective, like I know that you're talking about your relationship with God, and I also like that's really important to me as well. And obviously, if there's God, there has to be an enemy. There has to be a devil, and the devil is the one who puts those thoughts in you. So, like, it's almost if you think about, like, you have like the good angel and like the bad angel on both shoulders, and so you have, let's say, like the good angel is obviously pouring like good things into you, and the devil, the bad angel, is like trying to get you to basically self sabotage in a sense. And so
Yeah.
when you have these thoughts, you have to be aware of like this isn't actually me. Like this is like something evil that's trying to like get me to self sabotage myself basically, and so like make me ruin my life in a sense. And
Thank you
so
for that. And I don't want to push religion on anyone, but that's, it's good to share those perspectives. And this isn't going to be like I don't want anyone to get like, oh gosh, it's going to be one of those. But
mhm,
this is our belief, and that's okay. And I share that belief with you, Andrew.
mhm,
And
yeah,
yeah, that's what I believe. But I promise you, like, that's for everybody else to decide, but it is what I believe. And I
mhm,
completely 100% agree with it. On
yeah,
that note, I have to pick up my daughter from lacrosse.
okay. Sounds good.
Look, this is what I love about the podcast. It's not scripted. This is real life. And look, and I get to say that. I get to say, look, I'm dependent on to go pick up my daughter from lacrosse, my favorite sport, all in one.
There you go. That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you for everything. And I'm really looking forward to doing this whole venture with you. Like, this is just an exciting time. And so, thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Andrew.
All right.